You've probably seen these type of pictures on social media lately. Impressive, isn't it? I mean, a human facing this huge whale. The guy, it's Guillaume Néry, an apneo diver, going far and beyond limits of normal, snorkeling, and seeing these creatures in the depth of the ocean like this must be quite humbling, I think. At least the picture tells a big story. So does maybe the next one, which is me, myself, usually more comfortable with a pressurized bottle of oxygen or air on the back while going about my hobby, which is scuba diving. And I enjoy being under the water as well. Why? Because the quietness and at the same time the abundance of life that you can experience undersea is just amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carl Gulta. I am a so-called human first advocate, also design innovator, an entrepreneur. I have multiple companies that I love to run and, force against the tides of time. And I'm also a business romantic. And today I would love to talk to you about my passion about platform-driven business. And it is not by accident that I started with a picture from undersea, because I think that coral reefs, or reefs in general, are very much like platforms. They're beautiful, not only to look at. You have to go deeper, look more closely on how they work, and it is a marvelous thing in the end. So today, I'd like to talk to you about platforms. Firstly, what are platforms? Second, of course, why and what is the appeal of platforms? Thirdly, the difference between product development and platform development. Yes, you guys guessed right. There's a difference. And of course, how to build your own reef, which is, I think, quite important and also fun. Lastly, I would like to show you some stories that I have experienced myself personally. So basically out of the real life situation. So let's start about platforms, right? What are these? Well, the most obvious and probably most famous and known one is Amazon. It's a marketplace platform, and actually Amazon is much more, right? Because they have also cloud services, subscription services, they even have their own products that they sell. So Alibaba would be to be considered much more like a classic bazaar type of marketplace platform. We have other types of platforms, like in social media, right? We all know Facebook or LinkedIn. They are a typical social media network or platform. You find it also in business, B2B. For example, MindSphere is a cloud-based open IoT system for businesses that run their data maybe on their devices, on their production facilities, and so forth. And it's interesting because, they try to connect all the different stakeholders. That's important. Also in our own private homes, we find networks, platforms, right? Such as, for example, Nest, which is a home automation, home security platform, and has, of course, inclusive products from Google, but they also open up their services or their platform to third parties so that they can be part of the system. Of course, they control that too, because no one has sure the quality. That's a typical thing of a platform, by the way. Even more, we have social gaming platform. And literally, Fitbit or Runtastic are social gaming platforms. Why? Because they put the playfulness in sporting activity and again open up all their connectivity to also third parties. Industry again, but this time smart factories. Axon is the system, a platform system from a German machine manufacturer called Trumpf. And their goal is really to provide a platform to make any type of factory to a smart factory, which is quite important if you think, because the power of data in this area, whether it is for sustainability reasons or efficiency increase, is huge. And again, opens up the participation of different types of stakeholders in the environment of factories. Last but not least, I would say, financing department or industry. PayPal, super well known, of course. It is probably the payment platform you can imagine. And it works P2P, so peer-to-peer, as well as B2C, and lives by the direct connection between the different stakeholders. So it really provides a super powerful service, and I think most business probably could not think anymore doing business without them. So if we look a little bit deeper, actually, into the business models and the different business models there are out there, we can differentiate only between 4 different ones, right? There's the classical one, the old one, the manufacturing type of business model where you build something one time and then you sell it one time. We all know that. Typical manufacturing company do that. Second is service provider. As a service provider, you buy something, usually it's a resource of a person for an hour, and then you sell it also as a resource to someone else. Time and material, we all know that, especially in the service industry, right? Thirdly, well, if you're a software company, it's a little bit different because you actually program only once and then you can sell it many, many times, right? Of course, you need to support it, no question, but nevertheless, it's quite different. And now platform business is even more different because you have many, many stakeholders or people that are buying something, that are selling something to many people. So it's all interconnected. And this is where probably for all of you, the interesting things start to happen. Oh, not to forget, Netflix, I would not consider as a platform. Why? Well, they usually deal mostly licenses. And, I, as a private individual, for example, even if I would own a film company, I would not be able to just sell them my film and they would provide it. So they're quite selective of that. So it's less of a platform, I would say. So what and why are platforms so attractive? What is the appeal and why are they so powerful? Well, there are probably many reasons, and throughout the session here, we will look at some of them. But one that we found probably the most powerful is the fact that if you look at the value of S&P 500 companies, then you can differentiate between the ones that are in the classical, more linear type of business and the other ones that are rendering their revenues from platform-orientated services. And if you look at these, their value is proportionally 9 times higher than their yearly turnover, okay? When you compare that to the regular classical business, to the classical business model of not doing platform business, you'll see that they're probably averaging in their value appreciation of 2 to 3, maybe 4 times of their yearly turnover. That means in average, you have up to 4 times more value of a company if it is doing its business as a platform. So let's speak or have the figures do their talking, right? So another difference, of course, between platform and product development is a view on their way of working. And the fundamental part is that in a linear business model, you usually start with, have some resources, some material that you turn into a product, right? And then you go about to ship it out to a retail maybe, and then to the clients. And usually on one side, you have the expenditure, you have the costs, and on the other side, you have the revenues. And they're very, very much directly related linearly to each other. Well, on a platform, it can be quite different. First of all, you need a so-called operating system. Think again of a reef, right? Beautiful coral reef. You need the fundamentals basically for it. And this is the operating system. And then, of course, you might have products, systems to clients, right? But on the other hand, you might have additional services connected to it. And it might be provided from different people or companies or stakeholders, right? And then there's even more, because maybe you have audiences that you need to build. On the other side, you have a community that you want to serve to. And these, again, needs to comply regulations and standards and stuff like that. So it gets quite interlaced and interconnected. But this is where the beauty happens, because all of them can be quite independent, and independently they can either, make sales or cause also costs. And it can happen at the same time. And it can be distributed quite differently. And that's the beauty about it. So by doing that, this shows the fundamental difference when you go about to develop a new or a platform by itself, to where if you would do a regular business in providing a product or just a service. Now let's look a little bit deeper into it, right? What are the major aspects that we have to differentiate? First of all, it's the customer journey. Whereas probably in, let's say, a hairdryer, right? The customer journey might be just, drying your hair. It can be on a platform. It can be way different. You have to look at the entire experience of the different stakeholders along a time period that is usually much longer than just minutes or seconds. And each of these different touch points can be valuable to the creation of new offerings, revenues, and costs. And this leads into the value distribution, which is a huge difference as well. So in platforms, you distribute the value, and the better it is distributed, the different values throughout the stakeholder landscape, probably the more resilient your system is. Also, culture plays a role. When many people think that IT is equal IoT, it's not. Because doing platform business and really doing it well means you need a totally different beast than your regular IT department. That also leads into process methods. You need special processes and methods to actually build platforms. Your typical linear waterfall type of process and the typical methods in project management will not help you to solve these huge and widely spread aspects of building a platform. Also, a decision you might have to take one day or the other is whether your cloud is your own or did you rent it. So AVS or any other type of external cloud can be of an advantage in terms of speed and functionality, but maybe because of security, it's not. So this is where the sixth part comes in, security and API, that you have to consider. And lastly, it's sourcing. Because when maybe in the old days we were used to have larger stocks, inventory that we could rely on, that we had a supply chain that would last longer. Today, it can be quite volatile. And this we have to put into the entire equation of it to remain resilient on that side. Actually, towards the end, I'm going to talk to you about 3 different types of systems or tools that you can apply to help build platform businesses. One is customer journey, which I just explained a little bit. The second one on the value distribution is the so-called descriptive value web. And last but not least, the blueprint that helps you in the processes to understand your entire ecosystem that you have to look into when you build a platform. So now let's look into how you can build your own reef, and especially what are the critical steps in building a platform. Maybe it comes not as a surprise, but it is super important in my opinion. The first step is really to have a vision. And by a vision, I mean you have to imagine the most beautiful, most lovable reef, or in that case, platform you can just think of. Because you want to open it up to other stakeholders, right? So it rather be super attractive. Otherwise, people might not go the extensive way that they have to go with you. So make sure at the beginning you really paint a beautiful picture, a picture that everyone wants to be part of. Then the next step is to create an architecture, a roadmap. So like with a reef, you need a fundament. You need a base where you can build the stuff on, the rocks, the stones, the sand, right? And although this analogy might seem simple, it really is, because you don't have to be super detailed, because the continuous forming can go, but you need to have the first steps lined out. And then it's about building a first team. And I usually recommend going for an agile team, and I like to talk about communities that are comprised of all the different people, capacities, skills, individuals that you need to win and to build something beautiful. Whether it is tech specialists, digital business analysts, business designers, experience designers, UX designers, IoT producers, right? All these different fields, you need it together. So don't build silos, but build communities. And you start probably off with a community where you think that this is the core of it, right? And usually this is how it happens. And then you build the next community about maybe another functionality, another feature that you need, or another asset that you think is valuable for the first launch of a platform or a reef. And so you continue going on. And all the different communities, although they are different, they share similar type of skills and roles, peoples and thinking, so that they can easily interconnect with each other and work together, but they still have their own focus to deliver the aspect of the roadmap. And then eventually, time comes where you have a proof of concept, right? Where you really let the beast for the first time out and check whether your system, your platform, your ecosystem is attractive and works. And once you have that, of course, you can start slowly but surely open it to the network, to your outside stakeholders, maybe, whether it is through social media campaigning, but you want to get some more people into it. You want to test it, you want to feel, you want to get resonance into it. And this is, I think, where it is utmostly important to talk and let people play. Well, and that's before the launch, because the launch is the day where you really go public, right? And this is actually it's almost like a click. It's a first time, and yes, it's usually very, very emotional, because you have all the different things that come into place. And that's the starting point for the next phase, and probably the longest one, where you start to learn and grow, where you will realize that certain things that you anticipate might not work out in the long run, but other things that you will change again. And of course, you open it up also to probably competition you don't want to fight for, but you want to live with. So I promised you at the beginning that I'm going to tell you talk about some real life stories. And this is what I want to do, right? So a real life story, the first one is about food. I mean, who doesn't love food? And it is about a tool I want to talk to you about, which is the descriptive value web, or value webbing as such, right? So in food and digital and platform, of course, the first thing comes probably to mind is, okay, some online food store, shopping, whatever, right? Yes, and then again, we started on a different way. We said the core first kind of community or start that we need of a network is a new and innovative type of cooking machine. A cooking machine that lets you cook like for the digital natives, meaning step by step, super easy, repetitively you can cook some fantastic great food like risotto or pasta sauce. And even if you have never cooked before, you will be able to do that. So that's where the first really great experience starts. And if you connect that to all the different possible value stakeholders, except for the food, which hopefully is natural, then you start realize that you can build a tremendous web of different value stakeholders, like, for example, of course, the food retailers, but you can think also of chefs that way maybe want to distribute their recipes, not in a printed book and not online, but directly into a system where people can easily use the recipes. Or what about dietary nutritional, right? Specialists that actually think and work with you to become the best, either to go on a diet or maybe to just train for the next marathon, and they can adjust recipes in a way that is perfectly based for you, because the machine, can measure pretty much anything that you intake or that you cook and convert. And so you develop an entire landscape of different attributes where values are being exchanged not only through data, which we usually first, of course, think of, but true values of beneficiary things that we can add to each other. So that is where the value web comes in handy. Second example is for Linde. Linde Praxair is one of the worldwide largest industrial gas manufacturer, you could say, and distributor. And there the customer journey came into handy and was practically applied not mainly to one customer, but to think of, how do you actually distribute industrial gases and who is part of this ecosystem and how could you build a platform system for them? So what we did there is to analyze through the customer journey how the different touch points of industrial gases with their supplier, with the refiller, with the logistics, with the customer, how does it work? Where is what happening? And looking at where could we add value to the entire system, where not only could we increase effectiveness or efficiency, but really where are things unsolved, where are new opportunities, where through digitalization, improvements and new values can be generated. And one thing that we realized is that we need to know exactly where the product is and at what point it is being used. And therefore, we've developed a new valve and guard system for each industrial gas bottle to actually localize worldwide every single bottle to know what content it has and what filling level it had. And this simple thing then was able to realize a great mutual benefit for supplier as Linde and their customer, because now Linde knew exactly where and when they had to supply their customers with what type of gases, for example, in an automated way. And on the other hand, the customers knew exactly where their bottles were on their premises, how much they were be using every day in a real-time measure, if they had enough on stock, and so forth. And even there on different stakeholder levels. So this is what happens when you apply a tool like the customer journey and build it or use it as an essential part of platform building. Last but not least, I'd like to look into the blueprint I told you. So if you think of manufacturing Airbus, it is quite handmade. So it's not like car manufacturing where you build thousands or millions of cars a week, a year, whatever. It is really more of a craft. It's individually handmade. You can imagine that efficiency there is always in contrast to safety. But what we did, we looked at the building, at the production of a single airplane, a little bit like building a puzzle out of it, looking at the different parts, assets that need to be built and set together, and then rearrange them by doing everything completely digital, meaning we looked at how can we track every piece from all the different suppliers, from all the different steps that need to be taken, and rearranged it or made modules out of them so that we were able to rearrange the processes And therefore, for example, when a piece was broken, was missing, was late, you did not need to wait for it. You could do different work that was modularly organized, maybe first, So like this, with doing this blueprinting and really look at all the different assets and how they interconnect and where you can optimize aspects of it. And by doing this digital, we were still complying to the safety regulations that are so harsh, and hopefully so harsh, to build an airplane. So let's end on the note of what is our takeaway. So I can say what I have learned in the last 10 years building platform business is that the typical linear thinking we're still often falling into is counterproductive for interconnected products. Or projects. It just doesn't work. We need different types of working culture. It's about, of course, the people, as always. They have to open their mind, but we also have to apply new processes and tools and look into our organization if we have to adjust it to actually be able to build a platform. Not every organization model will be able to build a platform business. Thirdly, we really have to look into networks and ecosystems. You really have to start distribute, open up, look for interconnectivity, look for how you can mutually benefit from something, because this only one winner will make the game is not really working on a platform. And lastly, you can look truly forward to long-term success if you manage to build a platform, because platforms are so much more resilient than single old-fashioned linear businesses. And with that note about the outlook on really beautiful business, I'd like to end with some beautiful pictures while diving, which is just the one thing that not only I love, but if you experience these underwater, it makes you much better understand why ecosystems and working ecosystems and platforms are a tremendous asset to life, to business, probably to all of you. Thank you so much.